My manager was on the hub. Obviously, this story does get really intense and really crazy, but before I get into that, honestly, make sure you guys do leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Also, not to mention that 77.2 of you guys aren't subscribed. So seriously, I consider clicking that subscribe button if you guys do enjoy these crazy stories, of course. And of course, as you guys are watching this currently, I am live on Twitch, so make sure you guys do follow me on there if you guys do want to talk to me or have any conversation with me whatsoever. I'll probably just be playing Minecraft and moaning. That actually sounds really sad. Oh my god. Anyways, guys, let's just get straight into this crazy story. Yo, what is going on, you guys? My name's Bubba, and welcome back to another insane story. So this story does take place back when I was 17 years old. Being 17, honestly, I've been hopping job to job. I'm gonna be honest, YouTube was not really a job back then for me because, well, let's be real here. I had school and I didn't have much time to play video games other than, you know, make money, play video games, and bang chicks. Or do the devil's tango. That was mostly my routine for most of being 17. And I remember as I was 17, I ended up considering getting this one job. And this specific job was basically at a cafe. Now, don't get me wrong, I am not good at making coffee whatsoever, but knowing that coffee would be around me and I would be able to stay awake throughout my whole school year of being 17 was a pretty good idea. So I remember I ended up applying for a cafe job, and no, this wasn't like the average Starbucks or anything. This was just a nice, sweet little cafe. Not really well known in the area, but honestly, it was there. And I remember I went in and I applied because they had a for hire sign on the window. And I remember when I walked in there, I saw this beautiful lady. Now, this lady, she looked outstanding and she had two beautiful daughters. Like, holy cow. And I remember I walked in there and I just kind of started talking to her, and I came in and handed my resume. And when she saw me, she saw I was like a charming guy. At least that's what she told me. She said it in a really weird way, though. She said it in a way like this. Oh, so you must be Bubba. You're very charming. Oh my goodness. Look at you. As she puts her hand like going down my arm. Kind of one of those like weird things that we mostly see in movies when, like, you know, couples interact or something. But this was pretty weird. I remember I looked at her and I'm like, oh yeah, you know, I'm just trying to, like, you know, find more work to do and stuff like that. And I saw this cafe for hiring. And then she said yes. And instantly she wanted me to do a interview, which was kind of odd because you usually don't get interview on the right away on the first day. But I guess we ended up doing it. So I remember we sat down across from each other and two of the daughters were looking at me. Now, obviously, one of her daughters were a bit older. I think she was like 19. The other one was like 16. And me being 17, I'm going to be honest. I mean, you know, I guess choices were there. I don't know. But going on, I remember I was kind of just looking at her and I was just kind of looking at her daughters and they were just staring me down. To be honest, it was just a stare fest left and right. It was kind of awkward seeing them staring at me all the time. But honestly, I was kind of like, whatever. I'm just here to make money and leave. I remember as she was interviewing me though, she was asking me really weird questions. She was asking questions like, are your eyes always that beautiful? Or for example, oh, like, do you like use cologne at work? And all these weird things. Honestly, I don't know. I kind of just took things for the best and just kind of just answered them. And I remember at the very end of the interview, she ended up standing up and we both shook hands. And basically she ended up saying, by the way, by any chance, are you single? I ended up looking at her and I'm like, oh, yeah, I am. And I remember in the back seeing one of her daughters just kind of smiling and looking away. At that point, I knew something was off, but I didn't really want to, you know, make too much of a fuss about it. I remember later that day, I ended up going home and I came on Xbox. And when I hopped on Xbox, I remember I was talking to the boys and kind of hanging out. As I was talking to one of the boys while playing Call of Duty Black Ops 2, yes, we were playing Search and Destroy. I wasn't a wuss. I remember I ended up talking to him about, you know, what was going on and, you know, me applying for this job. And I remember one of my friends told me, dude, like, you know, the owner of that, like, apparently has like a really bad history with like husbands. Like, she's been like through like 3 different divorces. What? 3 different divorces? That's kind of nuts. At least that's what I thought, at least. But then I remember the next day I ended up going back to the cafe and basically, you know, get my first rundown of how work starts. I remember when I got there, she was basically teaching me all these stuff and teaching me, you know, how to work the coffee machine and everything. But every time she would, like, for example, reach for something, she would really bend down. Like, bend down to the point where her peach was sticking out, like, insanely. Now, I know what you guys are thinking. Oh, Bubba, did you do the devil's tango with her? And no, I'm not gonna lie, I didn't. But this is where things got really freaky. I remember after the rundown, her daughter ended up helping me out and basically run the cafe with me. She ended up going to her office and sitting there for, like, I don't know, I want to say like a good 3 hours, basically half of my first shift. And I remember as I was working with her daughter for those 3 hours, I was basically just kind of talking to her saying, oh, so like, what does your mom do other than this cafe? She looked at me and started laughing. She's like, oh, well, like, she like does like filmmaking. I looked at her, I'm like, filmmaking? What do you mean filmmaking? She's like, oh, ever since she left my dad, she's been like, you know, doing like new job opportunities and becoming a star. And I thought, like, you know, it's like probably for acting or singing, you know, maybe she wanted to be in like the Flash show and Stranger Things. I don't know. She just wanted to be in a film. I thought it was like a movie star, but boy, was I wrong. Now, this is where things get really intense. So I remember I looked at her and I'm like, oh, that's cool. Like, you know, I've always wanted to be like a YouTuber or content creator is what I told her. And she told me, yeah, I mean, like, I don't know. She's special, I guess, as she's cleaning the counter. I remember I looked at her and I'm like, okay, cool. Yeah. Anyways, I want to see what a week went by. Me and her daughter really got close and stuff to the point where we add each other on Snapchat and I don't know, we were getting close. And by close, I don't mean we were like hooking up or flirting or doing the the devil's tango. I mean, we were just basically really, really good friends. Was I left in the friend zone? Well, I would be lying if I said yes. Because to be honest, we were really on that fence. Like, there's many moments at work where me and her daughter would end up like, you know, either touching hands randomly or literally just like, I don't know, run into each other in like a romantic way. I don't know. It was like a movie that was really cringe. To be honest, most of these stories are cringe. But going on, I remember as we were like, you know, getting everything together, I remember I had to go get my first paycheck. And when I went back to her office, I've never been back there, by the way. I remember kind of leaning up against the door and hearing moaning sounds. Now at this moment, I'm like, oh, like, is she doing her business? Do I dare knock on the door? I don't know what to do. And I remember as I was contemplating to open that door, I remember she ended up opening it herself. She saw me right in front of the door with my ear kind of leaning against it. And as I was leaning my ear, I remember the door opened and I saw what was on her screen. It was literally the hub on her screen, the actual devil's hub. And I remember I looked at it and she instantly closed the door right away. Like, slam! She closed the door and she's like, oh, sorry, I was just getting everything sorted out for your paycheck. Here you go. I was gonna come to the front counter. I didn't expect you to come back here. And I'm like, oh, like, it's okay, thanks. And I ended up going back home. When I left through the door, I remember her daughter ended up running out the door and coming to me. She came to me and said, hey, like, my mom's worried. Did you like see anything that you weren't supposed to see? I looked at her and I said, listen, like, I understand, you know, being divorced and stuff, you know, you're being really sexually active. Like, I get it. But like, you know, that was really unprofessional is what I told her. She told me, oh, so you think she was just watching it? And in my head, I'm thinking, no, she was definitely doing something to it, but I'm not gonna say what. So I ended up saying, yeah. She ended up looking at me and basically walked away laughing. And I remember I was like, okay, interesting. The next day at work, I remember going back to work kind of uncomfortable. I was kind of just really out of it, to be honest, after that day, but you know, who really cared? I remember I ended up going back to the counter and I basically just started cleaning, doing my duties as a cafe worker, I guess. And I remember my manager said that she was leaving to go pick up her daughter to bring her to work because she wasn't able to catch the bus the morning. And I said, okay, that's fine. I'll be here running the cafe because at that point I was kind of experienced enough to do everything on my own. And then I remember as she left, I instantly had a mission. After handing out 3 cups of coffee to random people and random strangers, I ended up putting a sign on the counter saying, be right back, 5 minutes, as if I was going to the bathroom. And I went to her office. I needed to know what was going on. To be honest, the curiosity was killing me all that last night, seeing what was going on. I remember I went back there and ended up going inside her office. She left it unlocked surprisingly, but I guess that was from her being in a rush to go pick up her daughter. And I remember when I walked in, I saw a lot. From devil's tango, toys all over the place, to literally having like handcuffs on the ground. And that wasn't even the worst part. I think the worst part was when I ended up moving her mouse on her computer and the hub literally opening up. The literal devil's hub. But when I looked at it, it was at a profile. But it wasn't in any normal profile. It was the profile of my manager. My manager was literally on the hub. I was so confused and I was looking and I'm like, dude, there is no way this is her. I remember I ended up scrolling down her feed, seeing a bunch of different types of videos, from BBC to midget to even granny. Who knew that this girl was all over the hub? And I remember I even saw one video that I ended up watching. How did I not recognize her? Because I'm not gonna lie, I was on the hub a lot back then when I was a kid. Anyways, never mind, going on. I remember I was just scrolling through kind of just in shock. And I remember as I was in shock scrolling through, my manager ended up walking in. She opened the door. She looked at me with kind of like an anger, but at the same time, kind of a fright kind of look. She looked at me and said, okay, Bubba, we're gonna have to talk about personal boundaries and we need to have a situation. She ended up walking and closing the door. And honestly, I thought she was gonna like probe me or something with one of her devil's tango toys. But she ended up basically closing the door saying, listen, I don't want to have to fire you because my daughter does love working with you. So we're gonna figure something out and you're going to date my daughter. And if you don't ask her out, then I will fire you. And we can pretend none of this happened. Your choice. What? You're telling me I have a choice of getting fired or dating your daughter? This was unfair. And honestly, this story is already pretty long. So I'm gonna cut it off here. If you guys do want part 2 of what happens, I usually don't do part 2s for these full stories, but this is a series of crazy events that happen back to back. And I don't think I can fit it all in one video. If you guys do want part 2, follow me on Instagram and follow me on all platforms if you guys haven't already. I'm currently live on Twitch if you guys do want to join in on there. And like I always say, follow for more embarrassing stories. All right, peace out, guys.